Hey everyone, it's Mandy. Welcome to week 3 of the Here It Is mini sessions. These past couple of weeks, I've been talking to you about my adoption and emotional abuse. And where there's pain, you need to find a coping mechanism. You need to find something that's going to counteract that pain. And for me, that kind of manifested in a lot of different ways. And so that is kind of what I'm going to be talking about. And I call them unhealthy coping mechanisms because nothing I did to cope was beneficial for my healing or for my mental health or anything. The first thing I want to talk about was kind of surprising to me myself. When you think about eating disorders, usually you probably think starving or vomiting, or when you hear that word binge, you think eating with vomiting. And I was surprised to learn that binge eating without vomiting, without purging is what it's called, is actually an eating disorder on its own. And I think for me, my mom, she had kind of like random rules when it came to food. So like if you wanted a pickle, you had to eat a sandwich. If you were going to eat a bowl of cereal, you had to finish all the milk. And I did not really care for milk back then. There was one instance where I went to get a bowl of cereal and she was already eating cereal. So she said I had to use her cereal milk, and that just grossed me out. So I ended up saying like, no, I don't want it. And she worked in the city, so she was gone. Well, when she would get off, from the time that she would get off of work, I knew that it was going to take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes for her to get home. And so when I would get out of school and go home, I had about 2.5 hours, 3 hours at most, where I was going to be by myself. And I think as a form of rebellion, because I would go into freeze mode and I wouldn't defend myself, and I think I kind of would break all the rules. So eat the fruit roll up, eat the pickle without the sandwich, eat the cereal and dump out the milk, just kind of like a silent like, haha, I got you. And also because I just really wanted it. And then as I got older, this desire for food, it just grew even bigger, because when we would go to restaurants as a child, I wasn't always able to get the Happy Meal, or I wasn't always allowed to value size. And sometimes it was just a financial thing. I wasn't allowed to get a soda. If we went to a restaurant, I had to get water. And when I got older and I started making my own money, I liked being able to go and order whatever meal I wanted, whatever size I wanted, whatever drink I wanted, go get whatever snack I wanted. I mean, most of my paychecks I made as a child, instead of saving and being responsible, went to food. And I honestly think that it just kind of was like a control thing. I didn't have any control in my life. I felt like purposeless and lost. And I think with the food, it was a way for me to control things. And I basically would get like this miniature high from it. It was almost like a drug, like getting these foods that I wasn't allowed to, or, sneaking it when she was gone. And there was a couple of times when I would like sneak my way into the kitchen and use my finger to like follow that magnetic strip that keeps the refrigerator closed, and just like, and then just kind of sneak the pickle or the juice. And I think it was just kind of a form of rebellion and control, and it stayed with me for a really long time. And if I'm being honest, it's something that I sometimes still struggle with, but it's now that I know what I was doing, why I was doing it, and that it's even a thing, I'm able to kind of focus on it and see it differently, and learn like when I'm feeling this way that I need to use something else to get my mind out of it. And now I kind of just eat because I have to, because otherwise you die. And it's a work in progress. So, but that's one of the first things that I started doing when I was younger, was the food, and feeling like I always needed to eat a lot of it. And another thing that started when I was younger, and I think a lot of this kind of came from that I already had that low self-esteem and that self-hatred, and that loss, like feeling lost or not knowing where I belong, or feeling neglected, or feeling like my mom didn't want me. My adopted mom seems to hate me. I don't even know who my birth father is, and he didn't want me. And my, did I already say my adopted dad? My adopted dad, he stopped talking to me when I was about 14. My stepdad, him and my mom ended up divorcing, and he started dating somebody else's mom that I went to school with. And that just like really sucked because, he was a huge part of my life, and he was the closest thing at that time that I had to a father, and he was just gone. And anyways, the point of that, all of that, is that I think I sat a lot with just, I was always getting in trouble. These screaming episodes happened all the time, and during these episodes, I can't even remember if I already said it, it was just a lot of name calling and belittling and mocking, and just constantly being told what you're doing wrong, or just constantly wondering what I did to make something like this happen. And it just reflected on me in a way where I just constantly felt like the problem, I guess. So anytime I would get any attention, whether it was wrong, and by wrong I mean like in school when boys would like try to grab you and touch you, and usually when that happens you defend yourself. And for me, it's like I didn't, because I liked that they felt that I was worth taking that risk for, which is really sick and gross to think. And I was just, I call it extreme attention seeking, because I was even willing to put myself in almost any situation, no matter what the outcome. So there were times when I would like intentionally fall on purpose, or raise my hand in class and then just like say the wrong answer. And I think the good thing that came out of my mom and these screaming episodes was I was extremely terrified of making her angry, so I didn't ever really do anything. I was home alone a lot, and I didn't go anywhere. I wasn't really allowed to do anything anyway, so I didn't really get to act out on this attention seeking. But when I would be at school is when it kind of would come out a lot. And I think the problem with it was I was starting to build friendships with people and have these friendships with girls that probably would have been exactly what I needed in my life to start being better. But because they didn't know what was going on at home, because I had this desire to be liked or to please people, or I didn't want to say no to anyone, or whatever it was. If Betty liked Tommy and Tommy was flirting with me, I wouldn't tell Tommy like, hey, Betty likes you, you shouldn't be doing that. I just kind of like would give in to the flirts and would flirt back. And I was all in love with this one guy, and we made like a promise to each other. And then this other guy came and was like, oh no, you need to be my girlfriend. And in that moment I was like, I don't want to tell anybody no, I don't want anybody to be mad at me. And it's like this person that I was so in love with, I put his feelings on the back burner because this person was in front of me. And then once that person disappeared, I had to deal with this. And it was just like, I needed the attention, but it was causing a lot more pain because of the way it was working out. People were just getting angry. I was burning bridges. I was losing friends. The guy that I was all in love with wasn't in love with me anymore. And it was just, it turned back into more Mandy, why were you born kind of stuff. And when you sit there in self-loathing and self-hatred, and nothing works out, and nothing you do is right, and nothing you do is good, eventually you start feeling like you deserve to be punished. At least that's how I felt. So the next coping mechanism, and it's the one that I wish that I didn't have to talk about because I wish it never happened, and I wish it was just a one-time thing, but unfortunately it lasted with me for a really long time, longer than I care to admit, was self-mutilation, aka cutting. And I can't really tell you exactly how it started. I remember I fell on a tree, like I had my arm wrapped around the tree and I fell and it scraped me. And I remember, I don't know if it was a bad day I was having or what, but I just remember associating that scratch with like, that's what you get, kind of. And I don't even know if I knew that that was something that people did or if it's just something that came to me on my own. But I ended up taking like a leg shaver and I cut it and I took the little blades out and I made like little teeny tiny cuts. But I knew that razor blades were extremely sharp and I didn't know if this razor was gonna eventually like get a vein or, you know, do whatever. So I stopped using the shaving razors and I started using a safety pin. And at first I would use the safety pin to just kind of like do a bunch of little stab holes. And it was weird because it's like I wasn't making myself bleed. I wasn't scarring myself. I was just like feeling that little bit of pain that I felt was self-deserving and like kind of like, it was almost like if I would do something wrong at school or at home, it was like I would be the one to take it out on myself, like, oh, you're so stupid, you never do anything right, you do that. And I don't know if it was like to see the marks that were left behind, if it was a way for me to remind myself that I did this or did that, and maybe just like an attempt to tell myself, don't do it again so this doesn't happen. But eventually I went from the little pokes to just like straight just scratching. And I started feeling before what may have been a reminder to not do something was now a reminder of what I did. And what I mean by that is when I would see any marks left behind, I started feeling guilty or ashamed of myself that I was doing it. So I started hiding them in places like on my rib cage or on my thighs, like somewhere where I didn't have to see them, but I was still doing it. And I don't know, I wish I could explain to you why I felt like that was the proper coping mechanism. I don't know. All I know is I just really, really, really hated myself. And I felt like everything that was going wrong in my life, or every person that I loved that abandoned me, or whatever the case was, I felt like the common denominator was me, and I needed to do what maybe should have been done in the first place and just somehow figure out a way to take me out of the equation. And what I mean by that is eventually I contemplated and attempted suicide. And if I laugh during this story, it's not because I think it's funny. It's because I think of it now and I think of it then. And it's just like, I'm happy that things didn't work out the way they did. But when I would break out in hives or my allergies were bad, my mom would give me Benadryl. And the Benadryl would knock me out. And so I had heard or I had seen in a movie that people take a lot of pills and it kills them or whatever. And so I had woken up, and I can almost remember this like if it just happened. I woke up and I had missed the bus. And my mom was all upset because she didn't want to have to take me to school. So she had like one of these screaming episodes, and I was like, never mind, I have a ride. And I ended up just walking all the way to school. My friends that I had made, because I had been burning these bridges with the attention seeking and not caring about other people's, I guess, their feelings, they started doing this thing where like one day they would like me and the next day they wouldn't. And it was just that day in particular was the day that they decided they weren't gonna like me. And I walked up to them and they were like silent treatment, not talking to me. And I decided that when I went home that day, I was gonna take as many Benadryl as we had, whatever was left in the packets. And my plan was I wanted it to knock me out and I wanted to never wake up again. And when I think back on it now, I think the reason why I would go that route instead of all the other things you hear people do when they attempt something like this is because I think I always knew deep down that I didn't want to die. I just wanted everything to stop. I was not happy. I just needed a break from the screaming episodes. I needed a break from the enemies I was making at school. I needed a break from myself, and I just wanted to sleep and be just not thinking about anything, because I felt like my brain just never stopped. And so I started taking these Benadryl when I got home. My mom wasn't there, and I would like run to the door to see if she was there. And when she wasn't, I'd run back and I would take more. And I don't know if you've ever taken Benadryl. If you haven't, it makes you drowsy when you take the recommended. So I took like way more than the recommended, and I was just like, I remember like just feeling like, ooh, I'm gonna tip over. Like, it was an intense feeling. And my mom at some point got home, and because nothing had happened other than feeling drowsy, I started getting really scared. And I was like, oh, she's gonna know that I tried to do this, and she's gonna be so mad at me. So in that moment, I started acting like, or I started forcing myself to act like I was fine, like I was awake, I didn't do anything. And we were watching VH1, Divas Las Vegas. Whitney Houston was there, Celine Dion was there, Shakira was there. I remember Whitney Houston was performing, and actually I think she was singing I Will Always Love You, because I want to say I remember that playing right before I passed out. And I passed out, and then when I woke up the next day, it was just like, okay, because I didn't want to die. And I knew at that point that I needed to find something to help me, because I was losing a battle to everything. And had I just stayed where I was, I think eventually I might have had an attempt that was successful. And so luckily my sister let me move in with her, and these coping mechanisms stayed with me. They stayed with me all the way until I was an adult. They didn't just disappear. But moving to the city and getting to go to a new school and meet all new people, it was exactly what I needed. I was able to start life over, start it fresh. And everything that I had done, everything that I had went through, I had the choice whether or not I was going to talk about it. And so when I moved and I made friends, I started talking about my story. I started telling the friends I was making, hey, this is what I was going through. And it felt nice to start meeting people who had similar paths, who walked down similar roads as me. And when I was legally old enough to start drinking, I kind of replaced all the old coping mechanisms with alcohol. And unfortunately for me, that would be like a really bad thing, because I would make horrible decisions, and I would, man, I just really liked to be drunk. And it got to a point where I started blacking out when I was drinking, and I would wake up in the morning and I would want to start taking shots right away. And it was just really bad. And when you get wasted and you're all blacked out and you're feeling like crap, I mean, it was only a trigger for me to do the other things that I had used to cope with. But eventually I met my children's father, and I got pregnant with our first child. And you can't drink when you're pregnant, you can't smoke, you can't do anything. So I was able to quit that cold turkey. That's why I always say I was an almost alcoholic, because I really believe had my son not came into the picture, I probably would have just went deeper and deeper down this alcohol road. Because before I had my son, before I met his dad, I was already starting to have frequent blackouts when I was drinking. And when my son was born, I started realizing that, because I was already 23 when he was born, and me and my mom at this point had started kind of talking about my childhood and stuff. And I realized that everything I had went through at the hands of her was not me, but a reflection of her own unhealed childhood trauma. And I decided then that I wasn't going to bring that into my children's life. I have more kids now, so children's life. And that's what started that was the beginning of my healing journey. And it's been 10 years now, and I'm still not healed. I still have a lot of work to do. I've grown a lot. I no longer do half the things that I just talked to you about, other than the binge eating. That's the only thing that I still struggle with. And but it's not as bad. And now that I see it for what it is, I'm able to kind of stop it before it turns into like a whole spiel. And I was able to talk with my boyfriend about it, and I can kind of go to him now instead of go to the bag of hot Cheetos. But it's important to get this healing. It's especially important if you're a mom who has children, because you want to break the cycle. And I think I said that in the last video. Generational curses, if you will. You don't want to continue it, because if I would have brought my mom's trauma and my trauma and passed it down to them, I could be raising kids that will go down the same paths that I went and go through these coping mechanisms. And my God, it would break my heart if I knew any of my kids felt that they were that unloved or unwanted or unhappy that they would have to cut themselves or overindulge in food just to get a high, or to think of my daughter Madeline maybe like seeking attention in an inappropriate way just because she felt neglected. So you definitely need to find out what your story is, find out what it is that you may be doing, because I didn't know binge eating was considered an eating disorder or was a coping mechanism. So highly suggest a therapist. They always say therapy is like a dirty word and it means crazy and blah blah blah, but if finding a way to deal with life and get better makes you crazy, well then I'll be crazy and I'll do it, because I don't even know where I was going with that. I just trailed off. My daughter just popped in. Anyways, this is already getting super long, and next week I'm going to be talking about healthy coping mechanisms anyways. I've told you all the broken things. I've told you all the sad things. I held back. I opened up. My story, it's such a Mandy thing for me to sit here and try to explain a book I wrote, because I feel like I'm still going to be understood or things are going to be taken the wrong way. But I've enjoyed sitting here with you and telling you more about what these poems mean. And so those of you who have reached out to me and sent me emails and told me your story, it's been refreshing for me to meet other people who say like, hey, yeah, I get it, I've been there. And that's why I do it. That's why I did it, partially for my healing, because talking is amazing, and also just to kind of see if there's anybody else out there who feels like I do. But anyway, so I'm rambling now. I'm gonna end this, but I will be here next week talking about positive, happy stuff, and hopefully moving forward it will only be positive, happy stuff. If you don't know, I recently wrote my first book. That's where this kind of all came from. I completely skipped my intro today. But it is available on my channel page. I don't know how to YouTube, so it's on my channel's page, the link. If you would like to purchase it, it'll be in the description below or on my channel. If not, that's fine, because I can just talk about stuff and you don't even need the book to go with it. But anyways, have a great night. Be safe. I will see you in a week.